Okay, so now we have discussed till now the definition of normal delivery. I repeat, it should be spontaneous. It should be at term, that is between 37 completed weeks to 42 weeks. The presentation should be vertex presentation. There should not be any undue prolongation. There should not be any complication to the mother like bleeding or complication to the fetus or newborn. That it should have a good Apgar score. It should not have any anomaly. Now, in normal delivery, we accept only one intervention, which is normal, that is called as episiotomy, and the second intervention, that is active management of third stage. So these two interventions, namely episiotomy and active management of third stage, which you will learn later, these two things are accepted as normal. Any other intervention, we do not consider that delivery as abnormal. For example, if Pitocin was required, or if you require a vacuum or oxytocin, then that delivery doesn't merit as normal delivery. Okay. Second thing we discussed is diagnosis of normal delivery. The four hallmarks show, which is passage of blood-stained mucus discharge, which is because of separation of the membranes from the uterine wall, disrupting microcapillaries. Progressive dilatation and effacement of the cervix. Formation of bag water. The bag of water is amniotic fluid, which acts as a wedge in front of the presenting part, which helps in dilatation of the cervix, and regular rhythmic uterine contractions. Then we discussed what are the different parameters of uterine contractions, namely the frequency, that is how often patient gets contraction, the duration or how long the contraction lasts, and the intensity, how strong or weak. So as the labor progresses, the contractions become more frequent, their duration increase from few seconds and may go maximum up to 40 seconds, 45 seconds. And the intensity increases from mild to strong uterine contraction. So all these three things increase as the labor progresses. Now there is something called as false labor. False labor pain means, as I told you, any patient who is at term complaints of pain in abdomen, the first thing which comes to our mind is labor. But sometimes that may be due to some other reasons. Like the abdomen contains many other organs. There can be colitis, there can be constipation, there can be infrequent uterine contractions without formation of bag of water. And the best way to know whether this labor is true or false are two things: wait and watch. If the labor is true, all these four things increase. Mainly, the cervical dilatation will increase, the uterine contractions will increase. While in case of false labor pain, they may not progress or they may decrease. The other way to find out is to use simple techniques like give some enema. In normal delivery, because of enema, the uterine contractions get stimulated. So if the pain increases with enema, it is true labor pain. Or if the dilatation and the cervix increase, it is true labor pain. The true labor pain doesn't get subsided with simple analgesics or anticholinergic agents, while it may progress. But the most important thing to differentiate between false labor pain and true labor pain, apart from this, is the time. Any patient coming with labor pain, wait and watch for a few hours to see how it is progressing, and then label her as true labor or false labor. Because over the period, many times, the true labor may actually start. Okay, so these are the different things so far which we have discussed in today's clinic. Coming to the stages of labor. Now, as you know, labor is divided into 4 stages for our convenience. The first stage of labor is from the onset of labor pain to the full dilatation of the cervix, that is 10 centimeters. Normally, at the onset of labor, the cervix is closed. It doesn't admit tip of finger. As the labor starts with the progressive dilatation of the cervix, the end of first stage is heralded by full dilatation of the cervix, which is about 10 centimeter. Now at term, the biparietal diameter is about 9.5 centimeters. So to allow this 9.5 centimeters to pass through the cervix, it should be at least 10 centimeter dilated. That is called as full dilatation of the cervix. That is the first stage. The second stage of labor is from the end of first stage. That is, it begins with full dilatation of the cervix to the expulsion of the fetus. The third stage of labor starts with the expulsion of the fetus to the delivery of the placenta and the membrane. Now we also add the fourth stage of labor, which is important to monitor the patient. And the fourth stage is 2 hours after delivery of the placenta and membranes, or 2 hours after the third stage. Why we have taken this fourth stage? Because it is in these 2 hours that complications, the most dreaded complications like postpartum hemorrhage or shock can occur. So it is important to monitor the patient in these last 2 hours after the delivery. So now we have first stage of labor, second stage of labor, third stage of labor, and fourth stage of labor. Now it is very important to identify when patient comes in the labor, in which stage of labor it is, and start documenting the progress of labor. Now it is very important to see that the patient progresses normally. Though we consider labor as a normal or natural process, it is not without risk. You cannot leave it on nature. If you leave it to the nature, which was occurring few hundred years back, there was a lot of problems to the mother as well as the fetus. Lot of maternal mortality, morbidity, fetal morbidity and mortality. So if you leave to the nature, the labor or the delivery is a risky thing. So why it is important to monitor each and every labor or delivery, though it is natural? Because any normal thing may suddenly become abnormal in a very short and quick time. So continuous monitoring of this patient is very important. When the patient comes in labor, the first thing which we do is segregate mentally the patient into high risk and low risk patient. Why to do this? There is nothing like no risk delivery. As I told you, each delivery has a potential risk to the mother as well as fetus. So we categorize the patient into low risk patient and high risk patient. Now how we categorize this patient? This is very important based on so many things. The first thing is the history. So when the patient comes into the labor, the first thing you should go is go through her antenatal and previous record to see if there was any abnormality. Like past history of postpartum hemorrhage, past history of convulsion in the delivery, all these indicate high risk. Past history of blood transfusion indicates there is a high risk. So any medical conditions, any psychiatric conditions, any previous obstetric conditions may make the patient high risk. So it is important that you diagnose these conditions at the onset of labor. So you have to carefully go through the antenatal record. What has happened in the past delivery and what has happened in the current 9 months of pregnancy. All these are documented in this antenatal record. That's why it is very important to have a regular antenatal checkup and maintain the antenatal record and instruct the patient to bring this record at the time of delivery. Many times when the labor starts, the panic occurs among the patient and the relative, and they just rush to the hospital. Now, this should not happen. We advise all the patients in the 9 month or at the start of the 9 month itself that keep one bag ready where you keep your all documents, important papers, reports, contact numbers, some money, some clothes, etc. So whenever the labor starts, it may start in the middle of the night, it may start in the day when everybody has gone to the work. Patient has to just pick that bag and come to the delivery room. That's why it is important to have all the documents at one place or in one bag, which patient can take at any odd time of the day. So first thing is go through the record of the patient to segregate into high risk or low risk delivery. The second important thing is physical examination at the onset of labor. Vital signs of the mother like pulse, BP, edema, pallor. Fetal heart sounds, uterine contractions, per-vaginal examination. All these are done and documented on the first examination. So there are considered to be 3 P's which are important when you consider any delivery. The 3 P's are the passenger, the passage, and the power. The passage is the bony pelvis through which the baby has to pass. The passenger is the baby itself. And the power is of the uterine contractions. If all the 3 P's are okay, then delivery can be normal. So I repeat, the 3 P's are power. Power is given by the uterine contractions. The passage or the bony pelvis. And third is the passenger. Passenger means the baby. Whether the baby's head is engaged or not, whether the baby is fully flexed or not, or if it is presenting with breech or transverse lie, or if the baby is very big for that pelvis. So all these are the passenger related. So if you monitor these 3 P's, the power, the passenger, and the passage, the delivery can be normal. Okay. So now here we take the break and you write in the direct message, what is the second stage of labor? So I will wait for 1 minute. You have to answer what is second stage of labor. This is very important and this is often asked also in the exam. So we have discussed till now the stages of labor, the first stage of labor, the second stage of labor, third stage of labor, and the fourth stage of labor. and the 3 P's which are important: the power, the passenger, and the passage. So once you examine the patient, go through the history, then you arrive at a conclusion. Number 1, whether this is true labor or false labor. Number 2, what stage of labor the patient is. Number 3, whether it is a low risk delivery or high risk categories. So these 3 things are very important to document. Number 1 is whether there is any risk in the medical history and examination. Number 2, if there is no risk, at what stage of labor the patient is, and document the progress of labor by charting something called as partogram, which you will learn later. So all these things are documented. Whether the labor is true or false, if true labor, what risk it is, and 3, at what stage of labor it is. Now, as you know, when the patient is delivering for the first time, she is called primigravida, primipara. So primigravida, who is in the first time, takes much more time than the patient who has delivered before, which is called as multigravida. So the total duration of delivery or labor in primi and multi are different. So accordingly, the norms which we apply for excess or undue prolongation for the primi and multi is different. So next time when we have this partogram after the mechanism of labor, I will explain to you how to chart these different criteria which we have seen and how to monitor the patient. Since this is only the first clinical posting and the first session on normal delivery, I am giving you an overview of what is happening. So in primi, the first stage of labor may be prolonged or maybe as long as 12 hours. The first stage is again divided into 2 components, the latent phase and the active phase. The latent phase may vary, and in the active phase, which is from 4 centimeter dilatation up to 10 centimeter dilatation, occurs relatively fast as compared to the latent phase. The second stage of labor is again divided into 2 components. The second component is expulsion, where there is maternal bearing down and the head is on the perineum and the patient pushes the baby out. And the third stage is the expulsion of placenta and membranes, which usually completes within 15 minutes. The second stage is about 2 hours in primi and less than 2 hours in multi. This is a very grossly, I'm telling you, you will come to know in details about that when we actually proceed. So I'm giving you now overall view of this delivery. So when patient arrives with labor pain, we go through her history, we do physical examination. At the time of examination, it is important to do certain baseline bedside investigations, namely the hemoglobin of the patient and urine albumin at the onset of labor. Why these 2 are important? The commonest problem in the delivery is bleeding. There is no delivery without bleeding. Some patients bleed less, some patients bleed more. So it is important to know what is the hemoglobin status before or at the onset of labor. If it is less than 11, you should be mentally prepared to arrange for blood for that patient. Hemoglobin below 11 is considered anemia. So it is important to do bedside check of hemoglobin, and it is done with Sally's hemoglobinometer. Or if you have a full-fledged lab, you can send the blood. The second important thing which you must do at the bedside test is urine albumin. Hypertensive disorders, preeclampsia, eclampsia are very dangerous. Many times patient may throw convulsion at the peak of uterine contractions or even after the delivery. We must know her urine status at the onset of labor. So urine dipstick is a very simple test which we can do to know whether there is albumin and sugar in the urine or not. So these are the two baseline tests which are done at the onset of labor. What next to do? If everything is normal, we can ask the patient to ambulate. We can ask the patient to take clear liquids. Avoid giving any solid or heavy food. Why? Because the gastric emptying time is delayed, and in case any intervention like cesarean anesthesia is required, the patient may vomit and patient may land into respiratory complications because of regurgitation. So it is important that you hydrate the patient, you give her nutrition, but basically in the form of clear liquids as long as possible. You should not keep patient nil by mouth. There is no need to start IV line for absolutely normal patient for each time of delivery. But it is important that you maintain the hydration of the patient, maintain the nutrition of the patient. The next important thing is to monitor the progress of labor, and how it is done. We check the pulse and BP of the patient in the first stage every hourly, and we monitor the fetal heart sounds of the patient in low risk at every 30 minutes. And we monitor the progress of uterine contractions every 30 minutes. This is in the first stage of labor. As I told you, in primary, it may go to about 12 hours. So for 12 hours, you have to monitor frequently all these things. Vitals of the patient, namely the pulse, BP, and fetal heart sounds. Now the normal range of fetal heart sounds, as you must have learned, is 120 to 160. Many times when the labor starts, because of the uterine contractions, the placental flow reduces, or the placental perfusion going to the fetus is reduced, which reflects in the fetal heart sounds. So there can be drop in the fetal heart sounds with the uterine contractions or at the peak of uterine contractions. Any fetal heart drop which goes beyond 100 or becomes less than 100, or which continues to remain 100. Normally what happens, fetal heart rate drops up to 100 and comes back after passing of uterine contraction. But if it remains prolonged, it is abnormal. So continuous monitoring of the fetal heart sound is very, very important. Another important thing is to know the progress of labor. Two things are very important when you are monitoring the progress of labor. Number one is dilatation of the cervix, and number two, descent of the presenting part. Delivery can only occur if the head descends into the pelvis and comes out. Delivery is not possible if there is no descent. So this progressive descent should be monitored and dilatation of the cervix should be monitored. As I told you, the first stage ends with the full dilatation. So the partogram also ends at the full dilatation. Beyond 10 centimeter, we don't write partogram because the active phase in the second stage is very important. So it is important that careful monitoring of the progress of labor, namely dilatation of the cervix and descent, well-being of the mother, namely the pulse, BP, hydration, urine output, and well-being of the fetus, that is the fetal heart sounds, passage of any meconium or rupture of membranes, time of rupture of membranes, this should be noted. Okay. So now the next questions for all of you is, what are the three important P's which I discussed earlier? So write to me in the direct message, three important P's which are important in case of normal delivery. Now we have created a learning management software, that is Moodle, for all of you. And I think all of you know how to log into the Moodle. On the Moodle, that is our LMS of our college, sknmc.org, we have kept a module on normal delivery. And I have kept some important links related to the normal delivery on that module. I request all of you to go to the Moodle, log into the Moodle and see the important links. Some links are PDF files which are given by the WHO and other regulatory authorities. Some are the video clips explaining the normal delivery, the mechanism, etc. And the last is the assessment quiz, where there are multiple choice questions. At the end of this clinic, I request all of you to attempt these multiple choice questions, because when you appear for the final exam and when you appear for your postgraduate entrance exam, you will be assessed in a way of multiple choice questions. And some important multiple choice questions which have appeared in the past exams are quoted below. So far, anybody has problem regarding login to the Moodle, please let me know. You can give the message if anybody has problem. Now next, when we have assessed and we have made the recording and documenting the partogram, what we should do? Now, to conduct labor, we should check our equipment, we should check our setup. It is like a cockpit drill. When the patient is in labor, we should check whether we have following things in the labor room ready or not for the delivery. Number one is the delivery tray, which should include sterile towels, sponge holding forceps, artery forceps, episiotomy scissor, needle holder, and Sims speculum in case you need to inspect for any tears. So these are the things which must be there. Plus, in addition to clamp the cord, we should have two forceps. Normally we use Cocker's forceps to clamp the cord and cut the cord in between these two Cocker forceps. And later on, we may put the plastic umbilical clamp to the baby. The next important thing is to set the trolley ready for any intervention like giving episiotomy. We need a local anesthesia. We need certain drugs which are life-saving and which are important and which must be used for active management of third stage. And these drugs are namely oxytocin injection, methergine injection, prostaglandin injection and prostaglandin tablets, IV fluids, IV set, large bore intracats. These are to be kept ready in case patient goes into hypovolemia. Oxygen should be ready for the newborn. Newborn resuscitation equipment should be checked. Most important is the small suction machine, which we use to suck the baby's mouth and nostril immediately after the delivery. So all these things are checked. And of course, the proper light and the delivery table. Most deliveries we can conduct in the dorsal position, but sometimes lithotomy position is given if you want to do any instrumentation or give episode. You can conduct normal delivery even in a dorsal position. Baby tray, baby warm towels, baby resuscitation things are important. So you have to check all this equipment before you actually take the patient on the table for delivery. So here we stop today with the normal delivery, the first part. The second part will include the mechanism of the delivery, monitoring in details with the partogram, conduct of the actual delivery or the labor, active management of third stage of labor for the prophylaxis of postpartum hemorrhage. So any questions or anything you want to ask, you can ask. Unmute yourself and ask.
Sir, I have a question related to the third stage, or after what time after the delivery is the placenta expelled, like after the delivery of the baby?
After the delivery of the baby, usually placenta expels on its own within 15 minutes. The average time is 5 to 7 minutes, but we can wait till 15 minutes. But nowadays, what we do is, we don't wait that long. We do intervention. It is called active management of third stage of labor. And the components of this active management of third stage, of course, you will learn in details later on, are giving the oxytocin or the drug which contracts the uterine musculature at the delivery of the anterior shoulder of the baby. You can give either oxytocin or methergine or prostaglandins. This is one part. The second part is control cord traction. And the third component is uterine massage after the delivery. So with these three components, we do not wait for natural spontaneous expulsion of the placenta, but we do what is called as active management of third stage of labor. So have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other question you want to ask?
Sir, sir, I had a doubt. What is the difference between cervical effacement and cervical dilatation?
Okay, good question. Now, think of the cervix as a tube. Okay, this tube is about 3 centimeter in length. How much? 3 centimeter. Okay, and this tube, the two ends are closed. The end which is outside is called external os. The end which is inside is internal os. Now, gradually, as the uterine contractions increase and the baby tries to enter the pelvis, what happens? There is a stretching of the internal os. So gradually the length of this 3 centimeter tube goes on reducing. The upper part gets thinned out and widened. I will give you a link of the video which nicely explains you how this occurs. It is like thinning of the upper part of the cervix. The second component is dilatation or actual opening of this tube. So these two things go hand in hand. The dilatation and effacement goes hand in hand. At the onset of labor, the cervix may admit a tip of finger, which we call this 1 to 2 centimeter dilated. And the thickness may also be about 1 to 2 centimeter of this tube. When it is about 8 to 9 centimeter dilated, the cervix is like thin, papery. It has no thickness. Thickness has almost gone. And the dilatation is maximum. So these two things go hand in hand. And in the Moodle, I have given you a link to this video which nicely explains what is effacement and what is dilatation. Many times the effacement occurs even before dilatation very early. And in latent phase, though the dilatation part is less, the effacement part is more. So actually in latent phase of labor, the effacement occurs and the dilatation lags. And in the active component of the first stage, the dilatation goes faster than the effacement. Effacement and dilatation should go hand in hand. Clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir, can twins be delivered normally by normal delivery?
Now all of you listen carefully. What we think normal means without any complication, right?
Yes, sir.
That is not true for the definition of normal. If twins deliver at home without anybody's assistance and both the babies are fine, mother is fine, will you call it normal delivery?
Yes, sir.
No. In our medical term, we do not call it as normal delivery. Though for layman, it is normal delivery. If the baby delivers by breech, cries well, without any help, will it be normal delivery?
No, sir.
As per our definition, all these other deliveries where even the baby may be okay, mother may be okay, we do not definitely call them as normal deliveries. Why we don't call them normal? Because there is increased chance of complication in those deliveries. Now, out of 100, 10 may deliver without any problem, but 80, 90 may have problem. Our sole purpose of labeling anybody normal or abnormal is the risk which is associated at the time of delivery or after the delivery. Understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So what is layman's mind is normal delivery is not normal delivery by definition in OBGYN. Clear? So twins, breech, or any other type where the patient delivers without any effort at home, without any doctor, though it is natural, it is not normal. So understanding this concept is very, very important. For a layman, twin delivery, both babies good, fine, mother is fine, everybody is okay, is considered normal. No, for us, it is not normal delivery. It is, we call it as twin vaginal delivery. Twin vaginal delivery without any complication. Breech vaginal delivery. Even a patient of previous cesarean may deliver vaginally, but we call it post-cesarean delivery. We do not call it normal delivery. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Any other question? So we will take a break of half an hour. We will again resume after half an hour. I want all of you to log into the Moodle and see those links and answer multiple choice questions, and I will monitor how you are doing it. Okay. So I will stop this meeting temporarily and we will resume after half an hour. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.